Welcome to the Desi Chickpea panel, which we'll go across. I've basically structured the panel discussions and the entire panel timing into three sections. I'll just quickly go through the introduction of everyone, our very distinguished panelists, and then we'll try and create some kind of a demand and supply outlook from each of the major producing and consuming countries. And thereafter, in the concluding session, we'll try and form some kind of a view as to where the production trends and also the price structures would go across. So I hope that it's interesting. We've tried to keep the statistics and all at the very realistic estimates, and as you know that it's very difficult for countries like Pakistan and India to come up with some numbers, but we've tried to do our best and to keep only relevant information that is possible. So I just hope that everything comes about interestingly. I'd like to introduce our panelists, a very distinguished set, and with their combined experience and knowledge in the industry, that I'm sure that the panel discussions will be very meaningful. We've got Mr. Anis Majid from Pakistan. Anis has hands-on experience in Pakistan grain and industry and holds a number of important positions in the industry in Pakistan. He's very well known. He's given a number of presentations in the past about Pakistan, so we consider him an authority on the Pakistan numbers. Thank you very much, Anis Bhai, for being here. So, Anis Bhai, just a quick question before we go to others, that you're coming from Pakistan. Has the chickpea harvest been completed, or is it just underway?
It is being done nowadays. The harvesting is being done, and I'm sure that it will take more 15 to 20 days to finish, because this year we don't have much crop. So if you want me to...
No. Just very, very briefly. That's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. We'll discuss all that later. Okay. Atif Abraham from Khushi Trading. Atif founded Khushi Trading in Dubai, which today is a major importer of chickpeas. And we're talking only about chickpeas, but he does a lot of other pulses and all. And UAE has become very prominent importer of chickpeas, at least a player in the trade. And therefore, I think it's going to be very enlightening as to what Atif has got to say. So, Atif is the director of the Khushi Trading in Dubai. Then we've got Dharmendra Vijayvargi. Dharmendra has vast experience in India. He's running his own business, and he is very good on statistics, and he seems to be all the time with numbers, and he says that he worked very hard late till last night getting those numbers right for the presentation today. So we hope that there'll be something enlightening numbers. Well, we've got Jayesh Patel from Tanzania. So it kind of represents the regional focus around this area for Middle East, Africa, and the Indian subcontinent, with Jayesh from Tanzania, who would represent the Eastern African sector, and he'll give us some very important numbers and all later on to see how, in fact, I myself was amazed as the numbers of Ethiopia that came across. So we'll go through that. Welcome, Jayesh. Then we have Tim Edgecombe from Australia. Tim has had vast experience in Australia, over 25 years, and he's been with the agribusiness sector for a long time, so he knows the agribusiness in and out. But in the pulse industry, he's very new to pulse industry. In fact, it is his first CICILS conference, and he's the new CEO of Pulse Australia. So, welcome, Tim. Jayaprakash Singalji requires no introduction. I think he's been one of the very earlier traders for a long time in the pulse industries. And the good thing about Jayaprakash is that he's very indulgent in the domestic market and also the NCDX, the futures market. And given that amount of experience, the way that he's caught on to the NCDX and the relevantly new things is really commendable. Oh, sorry. Well, like I said, that we'll just go through the agenda, and we'll try and keep it within the Desi chickpea discussions. So I know that there's a lot of substitution and all that goes on within the pulses industry, but we'll try and keep it as much as we can. We'll try and create a global scenario, and I'll try and be quick on all the statistics and all, because most of the time will be taken up by the participants, and then later on we'll try and encourage as much as we can the interaction with the audience. Well, we start off with the demand and supply, and we're talking about the major origins and destinations in the Desi chickpea scenario. So we're talking about Australia being one of them, and Tim can explain as to why Australia is so important to the Desi chickpea scenario. But we have Australia, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, UAE, and East Africa. And then after everything, we'll try and create some views and some conclusion. With this, I'd like to start off with the Australian Desi chickpeas. And I think there's been a lot of talk around the CICILS convention already about what the anticipation of the Australian production would be. And we've got up there of a production of the coming crop, which is new crop, October-November 2012, as 800,000 tons. So Tim, how do you think this is realistic, and do you think that with the planting intentions of the growers and now getting into the planting season, do you think that the numbers are realistic and something that can be banked upon?
Sure, thanks Sanjiv. Firstly, we've just conducted a number of workshops around the country where we provide agronomic and grower workshops to prepare the industry for the forthcoming crop. And as part of that process, we've been talking to many of our chickpea growers, predominantly through the eastern states. There is some chickpeas grown in WA, but it's quite insignificant in the scheme of things. And what we found out of those workshops and just general discussions we've had out in the field in Australia is that there's a renewed interest in chickpeas this year. And that's really for a number of reasons. And obviously price is king amongst our farmers. But it's not only price, it's price and gross margin compared to some of our competitive crops. So if you take wheat, for example, the projected gross margins for wheat this year are particularly low compared to previous years, and what we're seeing is that there is a great interest in chickpeas because of the potential gross margin returns that they may achieve from chickpeas. Gavin Gibson yesterday mentioned the importance of... Is that better? Is that better? Okay, I'm sorry. Gavin Gibson yesterday mentioned that the importance of rotation in the production of cereals, and I think there's also been an increased recognition in some of those cereal growing areas that using rotational crops is to their immense benefit, particularly in ensuing years. And in some of those northern areas, one of the main varieties for rotation is in fact chickpeas. So we've also provided a lot of an increase in management training for those growers to better prepare themselves for the production of chickpeas. As most of you, well not most of you, but you may know that in Australia in many of those areas we've had phenomenal summer rainfall. Mm-hmm. And as a residual of that, there is a high level of subsoil moisture that bodes well for the production of the crop. One caveat, however, there is a need in many areas for some pre-sowing rain over, say, the next 8 weeks to make sure that that crop gets in and gets established. If that rain doesn't occur, then the 500,000 hectares that's projected on the slide before becomes under somewhat of a threat. Yeah. If all goes to plan, in fact, that could even be exceeded. So that's on the area side. On the yield side, historically, chickpeas have yielded about 1.2, maybe more tonnes per hectare. Last year, where we had favourable seasons, we had yields of average yields, I should say, of up to 1.7 tonnes per hectare. And some crops yielding well over the 2 tonnes per hectare and up towards the 3 in some of the better areas. The projection that's on the slide there, that's not there at the moment, but that was on the table before, is showing a yield of 1.6 tonnes per hectare, so it's slightly less than the yields we achieved last year. You might ask why we're jumping from 1.2 to 1.6, and the answer to that is threefold. There's better varieties that we're putting out at the moment, and in fact I have a number of varieties here to show the trade in terms of some of the newer varieties that come out that are not only yielding better but also producing better size and colour quality. We're also, I think, as an industry, becoming more mature. Our growers are learning to manage the crop in many better ways. We have much better disease control and generally much better crop management control. But again, another caveat, it will require, to achieve those sorts of yields at 1.6 tonnes per hectare, it will require some pretty good seasonal conditions throughout the growing season, as well as the pre-plant. And also, unlike 2010, a relatively dry harvest would be useful in achieving that figure.
Yep.
In terms of getting the finish that we're looking for in the crop, I think it's been said a couple of times at the conference that the El Nino, La Nina situation, it looks to be becoming more neutral. I think we might take it with a grain of salt, but hopefully we won't have those dramatic wet spring and summer conditions that we've suffered in the last couple of years. So I think, Sanjiv, on balance, 800,000 tonnes is certainly achievable.
Yeah.
I think also I refer to the graph that Gavin had up yesterday in terms of the seasonality that does occur in Australia. And whilst 800,000 is certainly there to be had, again, just to sum up, we need that pre-sowing rain, and we also need some favourable...
To which, Tim, if we come on to the next slide, we actually show that 2010 we planted a similar area. We're talking about 500,000 hectares.
That's right.
And it produced only 300,000 tons. And this year, we are hoping that that obviously it's not going to be a year like 2010, but you mentioned the subsoil moisture also in the ground, so which gives a good start.
That's right.
Yes, and so do you think that given everything, you know, like you don't have a drastic year as 2010, so 800,000 is realistic? Could it be more than that?
Look, it could be more than that. I mean, it's well known that a really good chickpea crop can get up to 3 tonnes per hectare. But when you start looking at averages across a geographical area in Australia, which stretches from Queensland through into northern Victoria, it's extremely unlikely you're going to get anything near that average across the board. So I think 1.6 is certainly doable. But we haven't even put the crop in the ground as yet, so to start hanging our hat on 800,000 is probably a bit ambitious, but we'd like to think that perhaps we can break the record this year and achieve something like 800.
Yes, and just by the way, letting everyone know that 800,000 tons in Australia would be a record crop. Australia has never produced 800,000 tons of chickpeas before. Yeah. So it would be a record crop if everything goes off well.
But why this kind of a panic is there when we can have a look at the slide which you have here?
Can we keep the slide on, please, for just a little while he's explaining the slide? Thank you.
Yeah, I want to talk about the slide. Okay, if you notice that in 2008-9 we had a production of 7.06 million tons of chickpeas, right? And in 2009 and 10 we had 7.48. And this year, so far, like present situation is concerned, as per the government estimates, we have 7.28 as our possible production for 2011 and 12. So if you go by the data, if you go by the stats, there is no reason for you to panic as far as the production is concerned. And the fact remains, like when you compare the Indian market with vis-a-vis Australian possibilities of imports into India, like we have to keep in mind that there is so much what we can import from Australia every given year. This has been the phenomena for years. So what we will discuss here is 7.28 million tons. If you go by the stats and all, it should be good enough crop, not to allow the panic which is there in the market. If you notice, in 2010-11, we had a production of 8.22 million tons.
Yes.
And what it did to the market, we are all aware about that. Like we had a subdued Indian Desi chickpeas market. There wasn't much movement and much forward movement for Desi chickpeas prices. It's only when we started seeing and we started the talks of the possible 2011-12 crop to be on a lower side, the market started moving up.
Okay, now given that 2011-12, you're saying that there is a certain amount of demand and all, will there be a targeted increase in production in the coming year? This I'm talking about 2013 now. Is there going to be larger planting, larger production?
A lot will depend on what the farmers' preferences are. Like if the farmers, they have the options of, like if they start comparing their chickpeas crop, what the yield they get with chickpeas and all, it will all depend on where the prices are ruling when the sowing time is there in India.
Yeah.
And we are too early for the farmers, like at this point of time, to decide about the crop, I guess.
And the minimum support price for the wheat.
Of course, minimum support price for
that's
wheat
and
also the yield factor, like with a particular amount of land, the farmers in India can get thrice the yield what they get in pulses, normal pulses. When grains like wheat, they get 3 times the more yield of what they get in pulses. So definitely, and with the minimum support prices and the procurement system which the Indian government has in India, it is far easier for farmer to go with the easy cash crop like situation.
जयप्रकाश जी, स्टॉक्स आपको बहुत कम लग रहे हैं वहाँ पर इंडिया में? चने के स्टॉक्स जो हैं बहुत कम हैं?
स्टॉक अभी नई क्रॉप का था, सारा स्टॉक में ही जा रहा है हमारा।
हाँ, तो मतलब कि आगे जा कर के कमी पड़ सकती है।
नई क्रॉप का माल सब स्टॉक में ही जा रहा है।
Okay. Well, we've got a little bit of a graph over here, which just basically I'd like to show that while the total pulses production in India is relatively steady, it's only the Desi chickpeas production as a portion of the Indian pulses production is slightly on the lower side. Is that right? Yeah. Okay, thanks, Dharmendra, to give an insight on the Indian production side and the consumption and what the imports are. But we'll just go into Pakistan, and well, Pakistan almost for a year and a half has been the driving force of the chickpea market, at least the way that we see it from Australia. We had the defective crop in 2010. Entire of the crop was consumed by Pakistan, so that demand has kept up. And this year we see that there's some drastic figures of production, and I'm told that even 200,000 is a very optimistic figure. It could be even lower than that. What do you have to say to that, Niswa?
Yeah, actually, Desi chickpeas among the pulses in Pakistan is the biggest crop, and it used to be normally 500 to 600,000 tons, and it varies. Sometime it the highest was 1 million tons crop, and the lowest was 300,000 tons. But this year, because of the weather and the raining season and the frost has spoiled the crop, and it is almost the 25%. If you calculate by 600,000 tons, it comes around 150,000 tons. But some areas has got a little bit better and some areas are worse. So if we calculate, like, it could be 200,000 tons this year, but it is being harvested and we'll get the result maybe the end of this month. So we'll come to know exactly. But this is like, 200,000 ton is, and the consumption is around 600,000 tons. So we need to import. And the carryover we have is around 50,000 tons. And from Australia, we have already booked around 100,000
tons. 100,000 tons, yes.
It's around.
Yes.
So we will be needing more Desis this year. And what I expect that from Australia, we'll be having a very good new crop. And the new crops comes in Australia in November. So we'll be having 4 to 5 months to buy for this new crop.
You mean right from October, November, right up to January, February?
Yes. If we're buying November, December, January, February, we have 4 months to buy the crop, because this year our season just started and we have enough, and we have already booked some quantities. So people do not need to panic. And next year we'll be having, Australia is having a good crop. So hopefully we are not going to consume all the cargo which is coming from Australia now, and the crop is already harvested, and the carryover stock is there.
Yes.
And my opinion is that when the Australia is growing next year 800,000 tons, which would be double crop, and regularly Pakistan is importing when the crop is less, and India is also importing. So if the Australian have the double crop, then my feeling is that the prices would be stable or little less, so that, you know, for this whole year we'll be comfortable, because the Desi chickpeas used to be 50 rupees a kilo in Pakistan, and the dal was around 60 rupees, and now it is 95 rupees a kilo.
I hear that chicken is probably at almost the same price as Desi Chana in Pakistan.
Yeah, the chicken and dal is like that. So it means that, you know, the consumption would go down.
Yeah.
And that would, because other pulses like black matpe, green moon beans, and also are parallel prices. So I'm sure that the consumption would be little lesser, and the yellow peas and dun peas would be covering. So my opinion is that Pakistani buyers should not be a panicky situation now, and should sail smoothly.
Okay, well that's what Anis Bhai's prediction is. But I also see in those numbers that you've given that Pakistan actually has a propensity to reduce the consumption in case of the prices or the production is not there. Yeah. So is it a substitution towards yellow peas, like you say?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
all right.
We have the yellow peas and dun peas. Yellow peas and dun peas are there as a substitute.
Yeah.
And other pulses are also the parallel prices, like the black mat with the marsh dal, we have 90 rupees a kilo, and the chana dal we have 90 rupees a kilo. So buyers have the option, and the moong dal is also not very high.
Yeah.
So the buyers have the option now.
And not to forget the chicken at 100 rupees a kilo.
Of course. Yes.
Yeah, now just quickly coming to this Pakistan graph, I'd just like to point out on behalf of Anis Bhai, is that Pakistan actually has the potential to produce 1 million tons. It's done it before. So in the year 2004-05, it actually produced 1 million tons of Desi chickpeas. So this year is an extraordinarily low year. But unlike India, where there is some question of whether the chickpea would be intensively grown or not, but I think that the way that Pakistan would get into October, November, December, there is every chance that there will be a larger planting, and hopefully that all going well, we could see 2013, April, May, as a larger crop. Could be anywhere between 6 to 800,000, 1 million tons.
Yeah, maybe, but it's all depend on the God's act.
Yeah.
If everything goes well, definitely we'll be having a good crop.
Okay. Thank you very much, Anis Bhai. Now, one important market which we can't let go, the Desi chickpea without, is Bangladesh. So just very briefly on Bangladesh. Bangladesh imports most of, in fact, all of the Desi chickpeas. They import, it's grown to a market, a very consistent market actually, 80,000 to 100,000 tons of Desi chickpeas every year. And majority of it comes from Australia, and it's become so well known within the Australian circles that even the farmer sitting in northern New South Wales near Narrabri, he knows what during the Ramadan time there is a peak in the demand, and therefore the price should go up. And also Bangladesh is a consistent, well-known long-term market, and it consumes almost about 80 to 100,000 tons, which we in our S&D, when we draw out, we put towards Bangladesh and see what can be. So if you're talking about an 800,000 ton crop, I would put 80 to 100,000 tons away for Bangladesh and then see what is available for India and Pakistan. And why I say this is because Bangladesh, whenever you talk about chickpea record prices, Bangladesh is the one who's taken the prices up to $880 a ton CNF, or even further, and they'll pay the price for there's hardly any substitution of chickpeas in Bangladesh. So they just somehow managed to pay the price for it. Bangladesh is both a container and a bulk market, so that's very important to note because it has the capacity to just take a bulk vessel or two. So we can't discount that. That always has to be kept into mind. Now, just moving from Bangladesh, we come to a very important market of UAE. UAE has been an emerging market for Desi chickpeas and pulses in general. And Atif has given the information that there's an 80,000 ton import in UAE, which is a huge number. But it seems to be all, what I also hear is that UAE is the largest exporter of chana dal in the world.
Yes, Sanjiv. Actually, when I was gathering information from the local importers, I was also thinking I would come up with maybe half this number. But actually that number is 80,000 tons of imports for Desis. But that is not only from Australia, it is also from Tanzania and Ethiopia. Right. I would like to tell the audience here that even though UAE as a population base is very small, maybe only 6 million, a lot of the Desis coming into UAE is then logistically exported into the Gulf countries such as Saudi Arabia, Qatar and Oman, and Kuwait, Bahrain, because UAE is home to some of the most efficient and biggest millers around the world who are processing it into chana dal. Yeah. About 75% of the desis coming into Dubai from Australia is processed into chana dal or basin and exported to even countries like Europe, Canada, and all destinations around the world. And the 20,000 tons, which Jayesh would agree with me as well, is that Ethiopian and Tanzanians, which Dubai hubs as a re-export market into Iran. Mm-hmm. So a lot of these chickpeas are imported into Dubai as a re-export purpose.
So this 80,000 tons includes the re-export into Iran?
Yes, that would include this. 20,000 tons is a figure which we thought is right. Which is exported into Iran.
Interesting. Yeah. Yes, and it seems as if the UAE market has actually come off the back of the pulses ban in India. What do you see the long-term future of the Desi chickpea market in UAE?
Well, I would say that would depend more on Indian government policies. If India is banned for lentils in the coming years as well, then I would see a growing base of millers developing in UAE for importing desis, for processing into chana dal. But if India opens, then we would be seeing cheaper products coming in directly from India rather than people importing such a huge quantity into UAE and then export it to USA, Europe or Canada.
Mm. Yeah. Thank you, Atif, about UAE. And we now come to East Africa, which Jayesh has actually during this presentation, during this discussion of the panels, when we started off discussing almost about a few months ago, I was actually amazed at the figures coming out from Ethiopia. And I just had no idea of it being consumed at this level. But Jayesh will throw some light on it. Jayesh, that's while the export looks as what one expects, but it's just the sheer production and the consumption. It seems to be doing very well in Ethiopia.
Thanks, Sanjiv. Good afternoon. As far as Desi chickpea is concerned, Ethiopia and Tanzania, the production compared to the world production is quite less. But when it comes to the export out of the Ethiopia and Tanzania, it plays a significant role, the things. With regards to the Ethiopian production, yes, I'm sure that everyone will get surprised about the numbers, but the numbers are very correct. It has been taken from the reliable sources like the Ethiopian statistic agencies, government, the customs and revenue. With regards to the production figures of the Tanzania, which is also coming up, as you know, as the ETG, we got quite a grassroots presence in the whole region. Mm-hmm. So these figures, as far as the production is concerned, is on Tanzania. We do not have the data available from any government agency, but it is mainly our past experience, and based on that we have come up with the figure. With regard to export, it is quite certain because that data has been taken from the customs and the shipping lines, which is quite accurate. And Ethiopian data, as far as, again, once I repeat, the export data has also been taken from the government and customs. Ethiopia is quite regulated market, so it's easy to get the data, and the production data for Ethiopia is concerned, which is from the statistic agency, which produces this sort of data every year. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. No, thanks for that. And I believe that the production method is very conservative in Ethiopia, and really, you were mentioning something like only 10% of the arable land that is under cultivation. So that's a fairly small number. Is there any chance of increasing that so we get more supplies of chickpeas in the world?
Certainly, if you look at this, Sanjiv, in all the pulses, the production in Africa, in the many panels ahead of me also, they have said, also the people coming from the same region, day by day, the production across the Africa, starting from Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, Malawi, Mozambique, the pulses production in general is increasing. What we used to produce about the 5 or 10 years back, I think today the numbers are almost tenfold, it has increased. Secondly, till today, we all know that Africa, as such, the less attention has been paid. We had also an earlier panel, I heard the people say about the quality and all these things. One has to remember that it is unlikely like Australia or Canada or maybe the US. Most of the farming done in the continent, it is by smallholders. So the quality was the biggest question, but I think as the time has gone and the people have seen the quality and adaptability has come into the picture, and that has actually given a boost to the production. Once again, one has to remember, as I said, that these quantities are relatively less compared to the thing. So one has to invest in quite a sophisticated plant and other things to have the graded quality and other things, which is not happening, and that's the only reason. I think many companies like us and the others have started investing in those sort of plant and machineries. So that will at least help us to, market to accept the product, and perhaps that will also help us to increase the production as the time goes.
Yeah. Thanks, Jesh. The same figures I've actually just put into a graph, because what I saw from this graph was basically that no matter what the numbers of the production and the consumption is, but it seems to be a consistent kind of production and a very high consumption. So, what happens in something like in Australia, where we go from 800,000 to 300,000 or 200, but if you're consistently producing something, and if there is a crop failure, then do you land up importing chickpeas?
Once again, Sanjiv, this question is quite valid, but you got to remember Africa, there is hardly about 10 to 20% of the land that what we use as an arable lands from the thing. There's quite a bigger scope to come. So basically, yes, the scare comes, or maybe the pressure comes like that when you are trying to optimize 100% numbers. These numbers are as it is at bottom. Our yield is almost 600 kilo a hectare, which is far below than this thing. And I think below that, I don't think so it will happen, this thing. So yeah. It is not that we are looking for a high yield productivity base on the thing. We are looking from the bottom base of the productivity when it comes to the yield from the farmers.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks. That's very informative. In fact, it gives a whole gambit of information from different origins and destinations. One thing, these are all natural, demand and supply, and we're talking about the weather in Australia or consistency in Tanzania. But those are things that, of course, are like the act of God, and we'll just have to live with it. But Dharmendra, I want to ask you about what is this kind of a price control in India? And they talk about, the moment it goes up, then they want to try and keep it under control and check, and it just sends the shivers down people in Australia.
Hello. It again boils down to what the policies the government is setting from time to time, like starting from stock limit to having the control on like trying to have some sort of control on the commodity exchanges we have by way of increasing the margins and whatnot. So the government has a mechanism in place which they keep a close eye on. So there's not much to say about that.
Yeah. So is there a level which they are uncomfortable with?
I can't say actually what the numbers the government is uncomfortable with. Well, like we have seen like price increase of close to $300 a ton, like not $300 a ton, like if you talk about the exchange itself, like we have seen a price increase of close to $240 if I'm not wrong, and we still have to see what active steps government has to take as far as the price control is concerned. They have some mechanism in place where they are trying to put on some brakes on the margins and the trades which are happening at the exchange level and all. But on the physical front, like we are yet to see, like steps like that.
Okay, well, the other thing that is also concerning and probably too speculative for us is the currency fluctuation that we've seen across the board, and whether it is India or Pakistan, and for that matter Bangladesh and other places. So we see a lot of variation in the currency, and the Indian rupee, for example, is devalued 22% over 3 months. So, Anis bhai, how has it affected Pakistan? Does it directly affect the... Yes, the devaluation.
Yeah, the currency, of course, it affects the Pakistan also, and it has been devalued for maybe, if you calculate 3 months, more than 10%.
Yeah, but Pakistan keeps on buying at higher and higher prices.
Yeah, but you know, this is because Pakistan did not have the much crop this year. That's why Pakistan bought it. And as we were discussing about why the Indian prices has gone up, where the crop is good over there also. In my opinion, when Pakistan started buying from Australia, the Australian price went up, and India is regular buyer from Australia also. So when the Australian prices went up, the Indian importers bought in the higher price. So that makes the Indian market higher. In my opinion, this was the situation, and I think it was like that. Do you agree?
I can add.
Yeah.
Like what we can add here is that like the Indian market, like the Pakistani market, and like it works on psychology. Like the psychology has a big role to play. Like when they see, like when everybody in the trade, they see that the Australian market has gone up from $600 to $770 or $760, and Pakistan is buying on a regular basis, and we might have a potential shortage of production of Desi chickpeas. So everybody starts believing that there is an imminent shortage and we might be short of chickpeas. So it's all about psychology. Like if you talk about stats, demand and supply, if you go with those figures, like even if there is a shortage, there is an imminent time when you will actually encounter those shortages in the physical market, right? Like if we talk about the production itself, we have 7.28 million tons of chickpeas to consume. So if we are taking a call in the market, so like that is purely psychological.
Yeah.
It is going as per what is happening in other markets primarily, and according to me, if you ask about my personal opinion, people should wait for the stocks to deplete before they actually know like where the shortage is.
Okay.
7.28 million tons of production is good enough to, I think, carry us for 10 months at least into the crop year.
We'll take that on board.
Mostly,
But
I think it's speculation, because you know the crop in Pakistan is being harvested now, and the prices went up about 1.5 months, 2 months ago. What was that? It was speculation, and we just speculated that the price would go up. At that time there was no shortage. Still there is no shortage at all, because harvesting is being done now, and we had the carryover stock. It means that it was just a speculation. People started buying earlier.
okay. Now, just on the supply side, Tim, you know, for the longer term, we're talking about Desi chickpeas and the development of a commodity and a product and all. I know out of my experience that there are growers who like to grow more and more chickpeas because it's a good crop rotation and it gives them, so there'll be, even if the prices are low, there'll be some sort of production of Desi chickpeas always. But yes, it is price sensitive that when the prices go up, then there is more acreage that is planted. But from Pulse Australia's perspective, or from the industry perspective in Australia, could you just throw some light on the new varieties of chickpeas that are coming, which are yielding higher, so that even the same amount of acres that are planted will actually produce much more metric tons of product rather than what we're getting now?
सब क्रॉप जो ये इन्होंने 7.28 बोली है, क्रॉप का साइज बोला है इंडिया का.
Jayaprakash wants to add something into the Indian fund. Basically, he said he's been in industries for the last 50 years, and he does not agree with the production figure which has been given by the expert. So you want to add something there. If you could
this is the figures of not the expert sitting here, but it's the figures of the Agricultural Statistics Division of the Government of India. So these are the latest figures. The last figures was 7.66 million tons, and they've given the latest figures 7.28 million tons. That's what I understand. So,
anyway, let him to express.
Yeah, that's a figure, and we all know that there is a certain amount of tolerance in that.
Should I let him speak? He wants to say something on the.
Yeah, sure.
भाई साहब पिछले साल से 25% क्रॉप कम है. पिछले साल जो हमारे यहाँ क्रॉप हुई है उससे 25% क्रॉप कम है.
25%.
हाँ जी.
हाँ, तो पिछले साल अगर बोलते हैं कि 8.22 मिलियन टन्स था, तो आज बोल रहे हैं कि 7.28.
चने का भाव है भाई साहब, प्राइस 3600 रुपये जो फसल के ऊपर भाव है, ये इसी वजह से है ना, जो 25% क्रॉप कम है.
अच्छा, तो आपके एस्टिमेट से कितना क्रॉप होना चाहिए?
क्रॉप का एस्टिमेट भाई साहब मेरे हिसाब से 6 मिलियन से फालतू का.
अच्छा, 6 मिलियन से.
उससे फालतू नहीं है क्रॉप.
Okay, well that is a point of view, and obviously we all know how difficult it is getting information in India. So that may have been based on a certain amount of understanding of the market. But coming back, Tim, sorry to your comments on the longer term perspective of Desi chickpeas out of Australia.
Sure, thanks, Sanjiv. Look, quite some time ago, as an initiative of Pulse Australia, we set up an organisation called Pulse Breeding Australia, which brought together a lot of the pulse breeding activities that were operating somewhat independently around Australia. And my information suggests that program has been very, very successful, and we can point to something like up to a 25% increase in yield over the last 4, 5, 6 years. That program continues. The emphasis of that breeding program, by the way, is not just simply on yield, and of course that's a very important factor for any Australian farmer is yield, but we're also looking towards the market, and hence that's why I have a number of Plant Breeding Australia varieties here with me today. We're interested in not only producing good yields for the farmers, but we're also interested obviously in trying to produce those characteristics that the various buyers, particularly in the subcontinent, are looking for. So that breeding program will continue. I think yield is always an important plant breeding aspect and will continue to do so.
Yeah,
what that sort of yield might produce in the future, Sanjiv, is a moot question, because it depends a lot on the program itself, and but as I said in my earlier presentation, the biggest factor, of course, is going to be the weather parameters that are going to affect the crop this year.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you everyone.